Hello again. I know it's been a while. My apologies. It has been so busy. Um, but I'm going to do an economic update today, and then hopefully I'll stay more on top of it as the weeks progress. So, all right, today we're going to talk about what's happened in the last little while since the last time I posted. So, the Federal Reserve met again, and they've decided not to move the interest rate, which was what I had anticipated the decision to be. There was a lot of chatter for some reason, thinking that there would be an interest rate cut. Again, there's no indications from any of the economic activity that would dictate an interest rate cut. There's no reason for this. So the economy, again, is still doing really well. It's doing what it should. And of course, the Federal Reserve is not going to bow down to any political power. That is not what they do. They only have one mandate, as I've stated many times before, which is the stabilization of the U.S. economy. That is it. It does not bow down to political power, does not bow down to political party. That is their only job, and that is the only thing that they will continue to do. So they will focus on that and nothing else. Now, there have been recent talks about, with today's news, about the trade dispute that was happening with China. As I've stated before, China can't afford a trade war, which is why now they've come to a nice truce all of a sudden. So before it escalated any further in this dispute, which again, it was not a trade war, it had not even come close to being a full-blown trade war. It was a trade dispute, but as I've stated before, they can't afford it, and now they've come to the table and made peace with the U.S. for the meantime. So there's, calming down with that, which is good. The markets have pushed up very nicely. There's no reason for it to not continue to push forward. OPEC announced, there's a lot of news today. So OPEC announced that they will continue to restrict production of oil, trying to buoy up the price. Now, if you don't know how this mechanism works with oil, I did a video about how oil prices work and how that is impacted by the US dollar. And so you can watch that video to get a better understanding of how oil plays a role in the economy. And again, the slowdown that everyone has been talking about, there's definitely been a little bit of a slowdown, but not to the level that people are kind of discussing and analyzing. So oil, they're restricting demand, trying to buoy up the price. It's not necessarily that there isn't a demand for oil, but we still use oil. We just are not using it as much. So we are continuing to push forward with renewable resources as being our primary source, or trying to make that our primary source of energy for mass consumption in the U.S. So when you're talking about, hydroelectric and wind power and solar power being the top three that are being utilized in the U.S. and really globally to try to get off of fossil fuels. So oil is definitely hurting, not because there's a really a lack of economic activity, but because there's less of a demand for fossil fuels in general. So don't get those two mixed up, because this is where, again, old school economists and new school economists, they've had to come together and really analyze the data, and then that's where the old school economists are realizing, hey, we're just not consuming oil like we used to, which is why there's all this excess demand. It's not that there's a global slowdown, that there's economic slowdown. It's that there's just a lack of demand for fossil fuels. So there's that. The Green New Deal continues to be discussed, and funding mechanisms for that continue to be discussed. There was another principle that came out, and it's, again, just theoretical. Again, the modern monetary theory and this other one that was, I believe it's the fiscal theory, okay? The one flaw they both share, which is why it's a theory and it can't actually practice, not in the US at least, and not with any of the developed economies, is that these theories only work if it's what's called a closed economy, that we are not trading with other nations, that our currency doesn't trade against other nations. Okay, that would work. Modern monetary theory and the fiscal theory would both work if the economy was closed. But that's not what we do in the US. That's not what anybody does in the whole global economy. They all trade with each other. Okay, that's the beauty of mobility and having all of our advancements in transportation, is that we can move goods and services unlike we had ever done before in the history of mankind. And so why would we restrict our goods and services to just our sovereignty when we can trade it with other people and get their goods and they can get our goods, and we sell with each other and buy goods, and there's basically an increase of everyone's better off with trade. So why wouldn't we be trading? So these theories, again, there's a big push to utilize these theories, and a lot of the kind of heavy hitters of the economic world are starting to come out, and they're just like, look, this is theory and doesn't work in applied economics, and it doesn't work in the real world because it's not a closed economy. So until they come up with a better funding mechanism, those ideas will never take hold. They would decimate the US economy. And so it would never be allowed. The Federal Reserve would never allow it. And I'm pretty sure the Treasury would also not allow that. So that's until they get better funding mechanisms for this, that's not going anywhere. But it is going to continue to be discussed. So that's why I did a video on the Green New Deal. So if you're not sure what that all entails, go ahead and watch the videos, and those are posted as well. So that pretty much brings us up to date. Again, the markets are doing very well. We are heading into record territory. So there's not any indications at this point to slow that movement down, which is good. We need to keep moving forward. The Federal Reserve has been slowly unwinding that balance sheet of the 4.5 trillion. It's no longer 4.5. I believe it's 4.2 or 4.3 trillion. So they have been slowly unwinding it. Like I said, what they did in 3 years to pump that money in, it's going to take at least a decade or more to pull that money out. So it's going to be a while. Anyways, all right, there's your update. Hopefully that helped. And as always, if you guys have any questions, leave it in the comments below, and I will talk with you guys later.